Genesis chapter 6, beginning at verse 11. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence, and God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. And this is the approximation given in the NIV. So the actual would be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. And we have to make estimates. Which cubit are we measuring with? Yeah. For that matter, making it out of cypress wood is also an approximation. The actual word is gopher wood. So you're making a whole ark out of gophers, which is wrong. But
we could make this I'm trying to reason about the length of the cubit, because if we're holding to Mosaic authorship for Genesis, it's probably likely that Moses is using an Egyptian cubit, which could have at the time been standardized to one of the pharaohs, and not just whoever was buying something's arm.
Possibly. That would be a pretty good...
We'd probably have to exhume Ramses II and see what his arm looks like.
Well, Ramses II wouldn't be the pharaoh at the time of Moses.
No.
But I'll get to that next Bible study. Or maybe 2 Bible studies for now. Anyways. But yeah, gopher wood. A gopher is just the transliteration of the actual Hebrew word, and it only appears that one time in all of Scripture. So we're like, what does this mean? And we don't know. It might have something to do with pitch, because pitch is gopher. So you don't know. Anyways. So make a roof for it and finish the ark to within a cubit of the top. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and stored away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So that's the end of chapter 6. So before I start getting into some of that, any questions so far? Yes.
Why did Noah have to bring 2 mosquitoes on the ark?
Did he really have a choice?
Yeah, no, he did. I suppose.
I was going to keep them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you just imagining him for the entire year just trying to go get them with a fly swatter or something?
No, this is
just
a question.
run across the entirety of the ark?
This is a question that Eli wanted me to ask. This was a good opportunity.
For the dragonflies to eat.
Sure.
Oh, mosquitoes.
Anyway. So with this, I do want to just comment on a few things. So first off, we have pretty much a rectangular arc. So we have, so you have, 50 cubits wide. You have 50 cubits wide. You also have 30 cubits high. Actually, it should be a little bit longer. Yeah. and then you have 300 cubits long. So you have pretty much a rectangular arc. And there's been a whole bunch of different ways to try and figure out, okay, well, how to divide this. You also know that there are 3 different levels to it inside. So God has upper, middle, and lower deck. So you do know that this is gradated somehow. We also could say, well, it has some sort of roof, something to cover them with the lots and lots of rain that's on there. You'd also suppose, well, maybe you'd have different windows here or there, probably on the upper part here. You wouldn't want that on the lower stuff, because this is well before you get to the era of manufacturing glass. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we don't know exactly the design of it, but the design would probably be complex. Now, it is mentioned that Noah started work around 500 years of age. So that's where chapter 5 ends, is Noah was 500 years old. He became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So his sons were alive when God sent him word. And then when Noah completed the ark, and this comes up in the next chapter, he's 600. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing could have taken up to a century for him to build. So he had a lot of time to be very particular with what he wanted to do. Yeah. And when you actually look at, well, just how this would work in water, it actually would work in water. There's been various tests and other things. Some people have said, like, oh, this will never work, and then but that's because they're using certain modern designs instead of actual. No, it's a rectangle. So it doesn't actually have to float or sail anywhere. It just has to go up and down. It's not supposed to be aerodynamic whatsoever. Hydrodynamic. Yeah, so it just needs to float. Okay.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah. The next question is, like, how can all the animals fit in there? Because if you take all the species of the earth, you can't make them all fit in here. And yes, that would be the case if we're talking about species. So the actual word that God uses is kind. So everything is according to its kind, whether it's animals or plants or whatever. So sometimes people would assume this to be, or actually most of the time, people assume this to be species because this is the smallest unit that we are working with in biology. Now we're into subspecies and stuff. But this is usually the one that people gravitate to. But that's a pretty arbitrary association here. Because when we're actually looking at, well, how do animals adapt and develop? Well, we actually do see that new species can come up. So you can say, well, polar bears aren't grizzlies. Like there's quite a bit of genetic variation in them. If they're coming from a common ancestor, and very obviously so. So what's going on there? Well, you just have certain amount of genetic information, so DNA, being lost in one and not the other. So polar bears are white because they can't help being white. They lost the pigmentation in their genetic code. So they can't really go anywhere else and stop being white. So the next one up would be genus. So we find with genus, well, yeah, we can also find creation of new genuses. They do come up every so often. It's much rarer, but they do come up. But we actually haven't observed any new families come in. which is the next one beyond that. So we've never seen a new development, like when we started studying these things and trying to map them out, taxonomic. The word that I'm trying to say.
Taxonomize?
Sure.
Taxonomy?
Sure.
Taxonomify?
Yeah. Sure. Why not? We'll go with that. You don't actually find, since we've been studying this, new families being developed at all. We do map these out. And then also, if you really wanted to, let's say, subspecies, just put that in there. Because scientists, they get bored and they're like, oh, we have to map even more stuff now. Because I have to publish a paper to stay relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. So most likely what's going on is, if you're looking at arguments for evolution, well, it kind of gets stopped right here. And for everything that comes after, they're like, oh yeah, well, just trust us, bro. Well, they don't do that exactly. They actually look through fossil records and whatnot. But with those general assessments, it is not any living observable examples. They have to approximate based on whatever evidence that they have. So for us, we can say, well, maybe kind doesn't equal that, but since families don't actually change, maybe this is what we're really talking about. So when animal kinds come together and they're becoming more and more diverse, so certain genetics are being specified as you continue. So certain genetic information, for example, being lost, as in the pigmentation of hair in polar bears. This is where you start moving to species. Yeah. So this is where you have the complete. So when I was commenting a little bit earlier on, well, like, what genetics did Adam and Eve have? Would that actually include things like Homo erectus? So are they just a different part of our kind? Yeah. Anyways, so if we're bumping this up to families, like, oh well, instead of talking about millions upon millions of creatures that we need to accommodate, now we're talking about in the realm of tens of thousands, if that. And then people are like, well, you still can't fit all these things on the ark. And if you're saying that dinosaurs survived, and then there's some reason to actually say dinosaurs would have survived. And if you're saying dinosaurs survived, well, then how can you fit an entire Tyrannosaurus on the ark? And good luck getting it not to eat the, I don't know, Triceratops. Well, why are you assuming they need to be adults? Like if you're transporting, wouldn't you want to have the most efficient form of these animals so that you can transport them and keep them alive? Why would you want to feed full-grown adults when you can just take adolescents or even eggs onto the ark and then just take care of them that way? They're a lot smaller and they eat a lot less. So no, yeah. So if we're talking about animals, we talk about kinds. If you also talk about, let's say, development of the animals. If you're bringing on full-grown adults, that makes no sense whatsoever. So do adolescents, or if you will, even eggs for quite a few of these things. Yeah. Why would you transport anything else? And besides that, there's been a whole bunch of different suggestions as to how Noah made the ark so that so that it could actually work with the amount of animals in there. So there's different ways of configuring your farms, for example, where you have animals on top of animals, and then you just have like sluice gates, which allow excrement to be very nicely moved away so that it doesn't fall on the next person or next animal. It falls away off to the side, and then you can clean it off in a trough or whatever you need to do. There's many different ways that you can try and configure the Ark so that you can accommodate all these animals.
No shortage of water. So. to flush it all.
Yeah, to flush it all, yes.
Yeah. No
Fresh water, so
no shortage. There's a lot of it coming down.
yeah. Well, it's coming down for the first 40 days, but they're on the Ark for about a year.
Right.
Yeah.